The biggest knock on the Pelicans the last few seasons has been that they could really use a proper point guard. CJ McCollum has fit in nicely to be kind of more of a combo guard for them and be more of a facilitator than he was over in Portland. But they could have really used a point guard that would have really helped elevate the game of guys like Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, offensive studs. Especially for a guy like Zion Williamson, they aren't that adept at creating their own shot. Brandon Ingram's kind of another story, but Zion, he's really athletic. He can be a great lob threat, and he can be point Zion at times. But in general, it's having a proper point guard. That's definitely going to help. They went out and they got DeJounte Murray in the offseason, and that is probably going to be a really big piece for them. Played one game this season, and part of that is definitely due to factors that are outside of his control, so that is not any flack on DeJounte Murray whatsoever. Who has stepped in as of late for the New Orleans Pelicans after being gone from the NBA entirely is Elfrid Payton. Payton has looked like the facilitator that this team really needed. He had 21 assists that you don't even see at times throughout a whole season for elite point guards. And Elfrid Payton was a guy who was out of the league just a week ago. Now he's giving you 21 assists. And they weren't just easy assists. At times, these were really smart plays by Elfrid Payton. Tell one man to drive, if that guy doesn't get open, he's got someone coming around him from behind the back. He hands it off to him. The pass itself might be easy. Having the vision for that and not forcing that pass on the drive, that's really impressive, and that comes with experience. And it shows the value and IQ for the game that Elfrid Payton has really developed. Some lobs too, and of course Zion has once again dealt with injuries. That's always been the case with Zion Williamson. That's always been the knock on his career. Not that he's not talented as a player. He's uber talented, super athletic, super high ceiling. But the knock has been he just can't stay healthy. And that's been the case once again this year. However, if you get Zion back in that lineup and you get Elfrid Payton throwing lobs to Zion Williamson, it's a recipe for success. And I believe that Elfrid Payton could absolutely fit onto this team as a real proper rotational player, even when DeJounte Murray comes back. DeJounte is, of course, going to be a starting point guard on this team. Then you got CJ at the 2, B.I., Zion. Center position is a little dicey, Daniel Tyson all. But at the end of the day, that's a very talented starting 5. So Elfrid Payton's going to have to come off the bench. And I think he can be valuable in that as well. You've got young guys like Trey Murphy, like Herb Jones on that second unit. I'm sticking with the offensive end here, talking about Trey Murphy in particular. He is both a great shooter and a very athletic player. He could pass for the dunk contest and the three-point contest. Have a super talented offensive player off the bench like that who has all the athleticism, all the talent in the world, to have a great facilitator on the team with him and Elfrid Payton now. That's going to be huge for Trey Murphy and his development as a player, because this is someone who's still very young, still has a lot of room to grow in the league, and he just has to have the right opportunities. And I think Elfrid Payton can really enhance those opportunities and take Trey Murphy's game to the next level. And then, of course, there's that defensive end with Elfrid Payton, which is perhaps the best part of his game entirely. Because Elfrid Payton, when he got out of the league, the knock on him, it wasn't his defense. It was absolutely his offense. He was not seen as a sufficient offensive player. As a result, it really harmed his overall impact because he was always a very good defender, especially at the point guard position, a position where defense can often be lacking. You look at offensive superstars at the point guard position in the league today, aside from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, most of them do not put any emphasis on their defense whatsoever. But Elfrid Payton was different, and he wasn't the offensive superstar, and that's what took him out of the league. But his defense was always on point. He was always one of the better defenders at the point guard position. That benefits the Pelicans in both right now, when you can trust Elfrid Payton in the starting lineup, but also when he goes to that second unit. I'll talk about the starting lineup first, but Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, when healthy, those are not really plus defenders. Same thing with CJ McCollum especially. DeJounte Murray, that's a little bit more alright. We didn't really see that in Atlanta, but that was also more so because he was relegated to more of an offensive role on that team, and that was really to his detriment on the defensive end. But Elfrid Payton, to be able to come in on that starting lineup, he's immediately probably the best defender, at least on the perimeters. It's him and DeJounte, and then it's everyone else just multiple tiers below. He comes into the starting lineup, he can instantly be a great defender for this Pelicans team, be one of the best defenders on the team, especially on that starting 5. I think that's always been, of course, the best part of his game. And while we're really seeing what he can do on the offensive end for the Pelicans right now, that defensive upside is even greater for Elfrid Payton. Off the bench too, because that's where he's most likely going to be when DeJounte Murray comes back. He's got a world of upside on the defensive end there too, and it's a little bit different compared to the starting lineup. That's why it's worth making 2 major points about it, because on that starting lineup there's a lack of really solid defenders, but on that defensive end you've got Herb Jones, you've got Trey Murphy. We're already great in the case of Herb Jones to really good defenders in their own right in the case of Trey Murphy, and you add in Elfrid Payton to that mix. That's a great defensive unit off of your bench. That I think can be lost a lot of times is that the second unit in itself is not entirely different from the first unit, in the sense of starters aren't always going to be playing with the full-time starters, and bench players aren't always going to be playing with the full-time bench players. You're going to have mixes in there. So if Zion Williamson continues to play and he comes in and he's still playing while a guy like Trey Murphy, while a guy like Herb Jones, while a guy like Elfrid Payton, they come into the lineup and Zion Williamson has still been out there, he's not been subbed out yet, then they can make up for Zion Williamson's lack of defensive potential, lack of defensive effort, lack of just overall defensive upside, and they can fill in for him. But by themselves, that is a lethal defensive 3. Herb Jones, one of the best perimeter defenders in the entire league. Elfrid Payton, that was always his bread and butter, was that perimeter defense. And Trey Murphy is a very good defender in his own right. That is a great defensive unit off the bench. That's probably what I'm most excited for with this Pelicans team. Because if the offense, that starting 5, they're going to go out and they're going to get their buckets, especially a guy like Brandon Ingram. At times he's had his inefficient performances, you look at the playoffs last year, but he's going to try to find a way to get a bucket regardless. And maybe they're going to get that back up on the defensive end. But then that second unit comes in and you've got this great core 3 of defenders. The other team, while the starting 5 was in, they might have gotten a lot of buckets coming off of playing CJ McCollum and Brandon Ingram. But what's going to happen then, this core 3 of defenders in Elfrid Payton, Herb Jones, and Trey Murphy, they're going to be able to come in and they're going to calm things down on that defensive end. They're going to be good defenders in their own right and kind of put a stop to the other team's momentum if they have to, as well as being solid offensive players in their own right. Elfrid Payton's been a great facilitator for this team so far. Trey Murphy as well, great shooter and great athleticism as well. There's a lot of upside with this bench. And even for Elfrid Payton in the starting lineup right now, where you can really trust him as a starter, there's a lot of upside there too. He is really redeeming his NBA career, and I think he's a great fit with the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm excited to watch them play this year.